What's going on, YouTube? Culturedog Sam Hatch back here with some LaserDisc stuff. And if you have been watching my live streams at all lately, I usually tend to do them on Thursdays, but sometimes, life intervenes and they end up on the weekends. But in any case, I've been trying to show any of my pickups towards the beginning of each live stream. And recently I picked up a pretty huge lot, well, huge-ish, well over 100 discs. And I wanted to show them to you, and then I realized, I never did show the other discs I got from pretty much the previous kind of 2 quarters of this year. I never showed them outside of the live streams. So there's a ton of stuff if you're like following my LaserDisc playlist or anything like on here that you're not going to see. And I got so many cool things. So I figured I need to clear the air first and show you everything I've gotten. So if you've been, fastidiously watching every single one of my live streams, this is going to be like a double dipper episode for sure. But then there's some cool things, so it might be worth revisiting. We'll see. And then the next video, we're going to start to get into the new stuff that I picked up this past weekend or 2 weekends ago. Time's moving by too fast. So yeah, at the beginning of the year, I didn't pick up a ton of stuff. It was really, really quiet. I was getting a lot of new HT gear, getting new AVR. I got a new pre-pro. Some new LaserDisc gear, some processors, etc. So I was investing in a lot of that stuff and speakers and things like that, and took a little bit of a break from LaserDisc until I went up to the LaserDisc swap meet up in Somerville. I think it was in Somerville proper, up in Massachusetts, at Wiley Meow's shop. If you're on LaserDisc Forever, you probably see him Wiley posting stuff. He's got a store called High Energy Vintage up there, and we had a kind of laser swap meet out in the back alley there. It was fun stuff. Anyway, so I picked up a couple things from that swap meet, which were long missing from my collection, including the classic Starship Troopers. Sadly, there is a little bit of rot, but the first 2 sides are pretty good, so all I need to do is get a clean final side, and I'm good to go. But I'm going to get the Japanese pressing at some point too. And supposedly there's also an Australian import version of this, but actually pressed by a different company instead of DADC USA. That's actually cleaner. So I've heard if you can find the NTSC Australian pressing of this, it's really good stuff. So I got that. And one that has been on my to-get list since it came out, and then when I started actively collecting LD again, it's a little beat, but I just want to get a copy of it, and I can upgrade later. You can find sealed copies of this all the time. I think it's a Kuru pressing, but Rising Sun, I like Michael Crichton's stuff. There's a certain Crichton-esque vibe about his books that doesn't always translate into the films. I think Sphere dropped the ball, so to speak, with translating the Michael Crichton vibe, and even Steven Spielberg to some extent. But this one had it. It had a lot of the same buzz as the book. Obviously, they changed a couple things and wimped out on a few plot elements and combined some things and all that. But it's not bad. Was it Philip Kaufman did this, and love the soundtrack as well. Who was it that did the music? Toru Takemitsu. Really good stuff. And the taiko drum scene in here is amazing. And great stuff. Big fan. And this one I had been looking for forever, and I didn't even know there was a remastered widescreen edition of this out. I thought I was going to have to get one of those junky image ones with the VHS artwork in the middle and a picture of a LaserDisc on the sides. But yeah, this came out in maybe 96 or so. I forgot if it ever said on the back of here. But I think it's 96 or 97. But Mountains of the Moon, cool flick, biopic about Richard Burton and John Speake, played by Patrick Bergin and Ian Glenn, as they're trying to find the source of the Nile, and all sorts of misfortunes await them. But yeah, great release from Live Entertainment, and real minty. And just continuing the 90s experience, I saw this one in cinemas when I was living out in LA, and I remember being relatively underwhelmed by it, especially the twist, but whatever. Gary Flater's Kiss the Girl, and Yeah, I forget. Yeah, it's LaserDisc. It's cheap enough. It's 90s. What year did this go? This must have been 98 or 99 when the disc came out. 98. So it's got Dolby Digital and all that good stuff. So I'm intrigued to see how the sound is. And I did not have the THX reissue of this after I foolishly donated mine. So I ponied up for a placement of the widescreen THX Total Recall. I have a loose copy of this, just the disc only, but I wanted to get a nice minty jacket, get it going again. Don't donate your LaserDisc. I mean, you can donate the ones you know you don't like, but don't donate things like Total Recall because you know you're going to regret it. But it was one of those things I'm like, I have it on DVD. I don't need it, right? This is something I caught on either cable or VHS when it came out. And it had a little bit of that kind of Michael Crichton-esque vibe about it, which I liked, and a really interesting Danny Elfman score. So I figured I'd finally pick it up on LD Extreme Measures. Another DADC USA pressing. It's looked pretty good, though. And Gene Hackman crushed it in the 90s, man. He was in all the cool stuff. But, yeah. I liked the kind of mystery of it, and some of the set design and everything was great. Had almost like a Cronenberg kind of feel to some of the hospital stuff or the clinic in it. And this was on my list, too, for the longest time, because I was like way into Gary Oldman, especially 90s Gary Oldman. And Roland Joffe did this adaptation of The Scarlet Letter with Demi Moore and Gary Oldman. I never got a chance to check it out. I would always see the Meg Foster one from like 1980s PBS that we would have to watch at school, but I never did get a chance to check this one out. So, yeah. I will take it for a spin eventually. And speaking of Michael Crichton, man, it always comes back to him. I was psyched to find this too, an AC3 reissue from what year? 78 was the film. 96, yeah, nice. But Michael Crichton's The Great Train Robbery, and it's got a cool gatefold. Yeah, love reissues, especially mid to late 90s reissues. And speaking of which, this still sadly it needs some more love here in the States. There is a German Blu-ray last I knew, but fantastic film. And the DVD is just pretty much a port of the non-anamorphically enhanced LaserDisc transfer anyway, so you might as well just watch it on LaserDisc. But Catherine Bigelow's Strange Days, co-written by James Cameron and Jay Cox. Seminal stuff. The cast rules. Love the artwork. This disc was pricey back in the day, just even the normal AC3 version. And it's known for having a really, really aggressive, interesting soundtrack. So, yeah, DTS is where it's at for something like this. Early on in the film, you're watching POV, a recording of some people, and so you hear the voices as if they're coming all around you and in your head, etc. So it's made for DTS. And speaking of DTS, I got another tiny lot. Eventually I'll be selling this one because I do have another copy, and sadly the jacket's a little beat up, but it is a seminal DTS release, the classic Jurassic Park. And yes, the levels are a little cooked. The LFE is like maybe 10 dB too hot, and the surrounds maybe around 3 or so, but it's pretty damn dynamic. Good stuff. And it's the same kind of gatefold situation as the other versions. Nothing in it for special features or anything like that, and of course has the Matrix Surround soundtrack as well on the analog channels, in case you want to not listen to DTS. And the other one in that lot was one I did not have in DTS, the Lost World Jurassic Park. Really killer soundtrack on this. I don't really enjoy the film that much. It's okay, and it has its moments, but the soundtrack rules on this thing. So I don't know. It's almost a little more balanced than the Jurassic Park soundtrack, etc. And there's so many cool bits of ambience and dynamic split surrounds, and Yeah, I know. I almost like this one more. But anyways, I don't want to say that out loud. And after that, I picked up a small lot from Vincent Onorati. So shout outs to Vinny, who had picked up a small lot and was just getting rid of the things he wasn't interested in. And I understand why he's not interested in this. It's one of my least favorite John Carpenter films. But it is a screaming moment of 90s-ness, and I needed to have the 1997 release of Escape from L.A. And yeah, Snake Plissken is back, and he's super disappointing. Well, he's not disappointing, but the film is disappointing. And though it does have a decent cast, and I'm psyched that Bruce Campbell was able to be fit into it, and Pam Grier and Steve Buscemi, etc. Peter Fonda. But yeah, I wished it was so much cooler than it was. That said, I still saw it in the theater, I think, twice. And Affleck was the bomb, so you gotta get Phantoms. And I don't even know if I ever got a chance to see this, so I was like, LaserDisc, yes. Another later-ish release from... Oh yeah, Disney doesn't like to put dates on the back. They just put copyright Buena Vista. But yeah, Joe Chappelle from Dean Koontz's screenplay based on his book. So this would be 97 or 98, depending on how long they took to release the LD. And again, since we're sticking a little later-ish, this must be 99? Was this 90? No, 98 probably. Scream 2 Electric Boogaloo, which is actually my favorite of the Scream series. Don't tell anybody. Scream 1 has a lot of moments, but I don't know. I kind of almost prefer popcorn. But this one, I don't know. This one's got some juju to it, and I don't dislike the finale. Like I do dislike the finale of the first one. So, and I didn't have this, even though now I have the Blu-ray, which has all this special features and stuff. But for some reason, this just like landed softly, and I didn't even really notice when it came out. What year was this? 98. So the director's cut special edition of Independence Day, also known as ID4, which is the dumbest title ever. Because Independence Day 4 doesn't really mean anything. But yeah, what are you going to do? Everyone was looking for cool Mission Impossible sounding names at the time. And yeah, some decent special features on this sucker. And it is so big it doesn't fit in any of my jackets. It's got a cool gatefold. And I still have yet to sit down and actually watch the director's cut, so I got to check that out. And what show up next? Double Dip. I wanted to get the THX reissue of this after I saw Moiki got a copy of it. Again, Japanese pressing, probably Kure. And 93 was the original release, but I'm trying to remember what year this Double Dip came out. Yeah, but at least, 96 and on for sure. But Michael Mann's Last of the Mohicans, one of my all-time favorite films. First time I ever saw it was on LaserDisc when I rented it. So, to get the theatrical cut, it's pretty badass. I've heard mixed things about the AC3 soundtrack on this THX version, but it does have an AC3 soundtrack, and it sounded pretty good when I listened to it, so I'm intrigued. I don't know if there's missing LFE or one of those kind of things, but I want to get it anyways. And it's got a little bit of a newer transfer anyway, so worth getting. And then my boy Ryan on the LDF hooked me up with some gaping holes in my Evil Dead collection, including the notorious Herald Videogram Japanese pressing of Evil Dead. And yeah, this is the one that has the fabled blue color timing, a very, very different look overall to any version of Evil Dead that came thereafter, and it does have even a little bit more imagery from the film print itself than some other ones that were slightly zoomed in. Some people say this is the definitive version of the film. I tend to stick more with the elite stuff, but that said, you gotta have a copy of it, so I got a copy of it. And why stop there? So he also found me copy of this sucker, and while it does have a kind of reused artwork template that this company used on a couple of things, it kind of works with this because the logo breaks free from it and breaks free from its boundaries, and it looks pretty badass. Another Evil Dead Japanese release. And this one is a little bit newer than the Herald Videogram one, but also looked good. And I need to get one more Japanese pressing of this one, but this is I think this is the earlier release of Evil Dead 2: Dead by Dawn, and you can't have too many copies of Evil Dead films on LaserDisc, so glad to have that. And then in the whole process of talking about those films, I was mentioning the one thing I'd been looking for since the dawn of time, pretty much since I saw talk about bootlegs of the film on LaserDisc in Video Watchdog magazine. I was saying about how I really need a copy of the Taiwanese bootleg of Army of Darkness, and sure enough, Ryan found it for me. And it's a little beat up, which actually is kind of cool. I mean, you can still read the spine. It's got a little bit of, damage on the bottom and everything, but the jacket is so thick. It just kind of adds the bootleg vibe for me. I'm actually perfectly fine with it. Lots of cheesy typos, etc. on here, and not bad looking, actually. I mean, it's a total upgrade from my old VHS copy of the bootleg. And nowadays we have the Scream Factory Blu-rays and import Blu-rays, etc. But this is still worth having for sure. It's cool stuff. Definitely. Maybe not as good as my old HK Region 3 DVD, but pretty damn close. And then finally, I think Trevor hooked me up with this from LDF. Again, one of those things that was on my list for ages, and I'm like, I'll get around to finding one sooner or later. But there was a still sealed copy, or I think the edge had been split or whatever, but it was still in the shrink copy this is 1993, of THX, the demo disc, also known as THX WOW, because THX WOW is one of the features on here. But there's also THX soundtrack and alignment test signals and a little documentary about the home THX audio system. And this is not about THX certified laser discs at all. This was originally released before that became a thing, but it does have a lot of great Lucasfilm moments and cool montages, and it has a little bit of a documentary about Foley arts, and it takes one scene from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade and breaks it down for you, and how it's created sonically. Really cool stuff. And it's got some Tomlinson Holman appearances in there, so gotta get this if you're a home theater nerd at least, and a Laserdisc nerd probably as well. And then finally, the sole box set of this pile. This was from that swap meet, actually. I bought this from my buddy Bill, and I had the 2-disc issue of this, but not the CAV box set of the Elite Dawn of the Dead. Very nice stuff. Some good special features on here, and just a simple one-sheet insert, and all the chapter breaks that sit around the flip side. There's 3 discs and a pretty beefy supplement section, but simple black and white labels on the discs, but gotta get a copy of that. I don't have any Japanese import Dawn of the Dead or Zombie discs yet. At some point I'll get those. But the price was right. I figured, yes, my collection needs a copy of this. All right, so that is getting us totally caught up to date to the point where I went and bought this most recent lot. So now in the next videos, we can actually start looking at what I picked up recently on this big LaserDisc lot. So thanks for hanging out, and we'll be back with more LDs. Cheers. And by we, I mean myself and myself.